Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Sweetie this side. So, as I committed in my previous videos, that soon I will be sharing tips that how to deal with the speaking part 3. So, let's get started. But before switching to the part 3, first of all, I would like to introduce to the beginners that what exactly is the format of IELTS speaking test. As you can see on the screen, clearly it is mentioned that there are three parts in your speaking test: part 1, part 2, and part 3. Part 1 is always related to you. Examiner will ask you the very basic questions like your name, where do you belong to. Apart from that, they will ask you the common questions such as how many members do you have in your family, what is your favorite color, etc. So the duration of part 1 is always 4 to 5 minutes. Once your part 1 is over, examiner will start with the part 2, which is always a cue card. The duration for your part 2 is 3 to 4 minutes. In part 2, examiner will give you a topic and you will be getting 1 minute to prepare. In that 1 minute, you can prepare your notes, whatever you want to speak about that topic. After 1 minute, examiner asks you to start speaking, and you have to speak continuously for 1 to 2 minutes on that topic. Usually, examiners expect you to speak for 2 minutes at least on the cue card. Once your part 2 is over, your part 3 will start. Part 3 is always related to part 2 only. It is always a two-way discussion. Like examiner will ask you a question which would be about the part 2 and you have to answer that question. You can answer that question in 3 to 4 sentences. So usually the duration of part 3 is 4 to 5 minutes. So this is a structure of your IELTS speaking test. Once your part 1 is over, examiner will clearly tell you that now I'm going to start with part 2. Once your part 2 is over, they will tell you that this is the part 3 we are going to start. So you just have to go with the flow of the test. And now let me show you the structure of the test. So please wait a minute. See, here you can see this is how your speaking test is looks like, part 1, part 2, part 3. Clearly on the screen you can see there are very common questions. In part 1, your name, your ID, where are you from, do you like boats, and part 2 there is a cue card. This is the main part. Your part 2 is always the main part of your speaking test, and you get 1 minute for the preparation. Once your part 2 is over, then part 3. You can see there are questions on the screen which are related to part 2 only. Part 2 is about business, so there are questions in part 3 which are related to business only. For example, what kind of businesses are popular in this city? What business will young people do? When do people in your country retire? So, questions, it would be related to part 2. Now, the question is how to deal with part 3. In my previous videos, I told clearly that how to deal with part 1, how you can perform better in part 2, and now let's start that how to deal with part 3. Please give me a minute, let me share a screen with you. In part 3, examiner will mainly check your fluency. Fine. So they are not going to give you band score about your opinion that you are giving a negative answer or you are giving a positive answer. But in part 3, mainly examiners want to listen lengthy answers. So you have to stretch your ideas. So every question should be answered in detail. So like suppose examiner asks you, do you think children should be given mobile phones? So here examiner is asking for your opinion. Do you think? So you should answer properly. In my opinion, definitely students should be given or children should be given mobile phones, but for a limited time. This is how you can answer whatever comes to your mind. If you feel that children should not be allowed to use mobile phones, then straightforwardly you can say, in my opinion, no, not at all. Children should not be allowed to use mobile phones till the time they are not adults. And in part 3, as examiner is expecting longer answers, so you have to answer at least in 3 to 4 sentences. To make your part 3 impactful, you can give examples also. For example, once children are adults, then they can be given mobile phones because it becomes the requirement once they go outside to attend their classes or to take their tuitions. So mobile phone must be given so that they can stay connected with their parents. And now let's discuss various steps which can help you to improve your speaking part 3. Wait a minute, let me share screen with you. In part 3, you should try to give your answers in a good way. Suppose the question is, do you think elderly people are more active these days as compared to young people? Then, just to give a change to your speaking, you can say, to be honest, I don't know about it at all. I never noticed because I don't have any elderly person in my family. So, if you feel that a question is really tough for you, which examiner is asking, then you can use some fillers, then you can say that's a tricky question to answer. But I believe then you can state your opinion, whatever you feel. If you really have no idea about the question, then you can say, I have never really thought about it. Or you can say, if the question is about future, do you think in future computers will replace teachers in the classroom? Then you can say, well, it is quite difficult to say something concrete about the future. If you like any question, then you can say, well, that's an interesting question. So these are the common fillers, which you can use just to make your part 3 more impactful. And suppose examiner is asking you 4 to 5 questions in part 3. To make your speaking more impactful, you can set examples in part 3. The words which you can use, such as, for example, then you can give a suitable example according to your question, and you can give your example in 1 to 2 sentences. So these are the common tips, which can be used to make your part 3 impactful. And if still there are any doubts regarding part 1 or about part 2 or questions you have in your mind, then simply there are videos related to part 1 and about part 2 as well on my YouTube channel. So please keep watching and do not forget to subscribe. And to enjoy the better sound quality, do not forget to use your earphones. Thank you. Soon I will be uploading the further videos about the writing section as well. Thank you.